Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Magic Behind the Mastery TV with me, Michael McDonnell, and I have a special guest today. We have Jenny Kovacs with us. So, Jenny, are you there?
I am. Hello everyone.
All right, so we're going to touch on the news first. What I found was it's Tony Robbins' new book release. It's Unbreakable. So, Jen, did you have any thoughts about the book? He did say that he was giving all of his profits towards feeding America. So, do you have any thoughts on charities or the book itself?
Yeah, so I haven't read the book yet, so in all honesty, but I love Tony Robbins. I love the work that he does. I went to his Unleash the Power Within in 2012 that he had here in London. And one of the things that I heard about him and he told us about himself there was like, because of his upbringing and the things that and the challenges that he went through himself with, like, you know, at Christmas sometimes not having enough to eat and things. I feel really pleased that he's doing that. He's giving those profits because it's something that's close to his heart. And also it's something that's so needed. I think there's a quote that says something like, lots of families in America live on under, is it $1.25 a day or something like that?
I think
Kids
so, yeah.
You know, can you imagine being a kid? You've got to go to school and have that energy and you're too tired, too hungry to really learn and really participate. So I love what he's doing, but I also love the fact that he's focusing on the unbreakable stuff, because I think, as we're about to discuss through here, there's so many things in life that can happen, and I don't believe it's what happens. I believe it's what we do with it that makes a difference as to whether it makes us or breaks us or somewhere in between. So I look forward to having a read of that book.
Yeah, it's. I think it's a follow up from his last book, which was all about finances and investing and mastering the game of money. I think it is, or something like that. So it does prove to be a valuable thing. It proves that it's needed. Otherwise, I don't think Tony would do it. To be perfectly honest.
No, exactly. He's a
All right.
master. He's an absolute master in so many different areas. But yeah, absolutely, he's a great place and a great person to be doing it.
Good stuff. All right, so this is your chance then, Jen. So this is your moment to share your story. You know, I'll let you come up with your own starting points. I'll let you set the scene and lessons learned. All right, so I'll pass the mic over to you.
Oh, bless you. So the first thing that I want to start by saying is the story that I'm about to tell you isn't a story that I share very widely. I started to share it a bit more publicly last year, because where I am now is that I'm now self-employed. I've been in business for 7 years, and Michael and I met through a forum and a group that we're part of. And one of the things that we see on a regular basis is there are lots of people who are going through what could be called the entrepreneurial roller coaster. However, we've somehow had this conditioning that we have to split business from personal, and sometimes the two kind of it's almost like they meld together, don't they? And one of the things that I want you to think about as I share this story is like your own filter of what you have struggled through or struggled with. Because what I now do is I'm classically trained as a life coach, also in neuro-linguistic programming, as both, you know, practitioner, master practitioner, and a trainer. Not that that's what my main focus is these days, but one of the things that I've really enjoyed doing is being able to help people to see things differently, and more than anything, help people to see themselves differently. And it's almost like to share, whether it's their story or what they do. So I'm known as a visibility specialist, which has got nothing to do with eyesight, but everything to do with helping people to stand out in the way that they want to stand out. And this experience that I'm about to take you back to happened in 2010. So in July 2010, I had handed in my notice in the corporate world. I was a senior training manager in the financial services industry. And I had decided and had to work my 3 months notice period. You know, it felt like a 3-month sentence, but, you know, it's one of those things, you know, you need to get out there, you know, you need to go out in the world. So within these 3 months, all I had on my mind was like, I knew I wanted to start a business. I had no experience of running a business, but I knew that I could train and that I could coach. And I also knew that I could make cakes and chocolates as well. So I decided to meld the two. So July, I did my last day at this company, and I literally in my head went, Friday's my last day. On Monday, I'm going to start preparing the stuff for my business, which I formally started in the September. What a lot of people didn't know was that for years, like, people said to me, have you got any children, Jenny? And I was like, oh, no, you know, career first. You know, I was in this male dominated environment, you know, pinstripe suit, cufflinks, and that was me as well as them. So I was like, no. But what I didn't share with people was that deep down, I had a desire to start a family, and I didn't feel that I could do it corporately. Sorry, I've got a frog in my throat now. Excuse me. So I didn't feel that I could do that or say that corporately. So the first point that I just want you to kind of think about is, where in your life do you have a situation where to the outside world you're presenting one thing, but you've got like this deep desire that almost like you daren't speak about? It could be to grow a big business. It could be to stand on stages. It could be to spend more time with your family. It could be to stop working and run a B&B, you know, in the country. It could be anything. It's often a big desire, but it's that one that you don't really want to speak about. So, like, I was married at the time. I'm not now, but at the time, we decided that it would be as good a time as any, I guess, to start looking at starting a family. Now, what was weird about this was that year I just completed some of my NLP training. And when I went into NLP, I'd heard all the stories, oh, NLP is about manipulation and getting people to do things, which it totally, in my experience, wasn't. What I learned was how we could be more effective in the world, how we could make a difference in the world. What I did at the time was I'd gone through the first kind of round of NLP training and had found that it was really empowering, that there was lots that I could do to change my own life and things that I wasn't happy with. Little did I know that literally a few weeks later, like literally 8 weeks later, I would be relying on those tools to get myself through what was a really difficult period of my life. So I'd gone through a process. I'd realised that I couldn't get pregnant very easily, so I had to go down a kind of assisted conception route, they call it. And I remember thinking, you know, mindset is everything. How you think about things is everything. If I master my mindset, I can make anything happen. I can make anything possible. And hey presto, I fell pregnant. And I got the really great news a little bit later that I was pregnant with twins, which was one of those holy moly moments. But at the same time, I was like, oh, well. So what you've got to remember about this time of my life, I'd handed in my notice, wanted to start this family. And at the same time, I'd started my business with no kind of experience of how to run a business. I was very fortunate that I'd like picked up some training work. I was making cakes, and also I was a consultant for a company that was a professional services company. So I was quite busy. So I had the normal things that pregnancy can bring, you know, morning sickness and all that kind of stuff. And I'm quite a slight person. You can see I'm not very big framed, and I was kind of a similar size to what I am now. So in my mind, I've like set the tone, well, I might as well keep working, because by this time of the year, I'm going to be the size of a house. I'm not going to be able to work as easily. I'm probably not going to be very mobile. And then there's going to be the thing of trying to look after 2 babies. Like, logistics of, for anyone out there who's parents of twins, like when they're babies, if you go shopping, say you go food shopping and you've got these 2 carry cots in the back of the car, what do you do? Do you leave 2 babies in the car and take the shopping in? Do you take 1 baby and some shopping in and leave the other one? All these like mental things that people don't think about. So, you know, all these things in your mind that you starting to form your plans. And then in 2010, while I was still pregnant, I went on a course and everything was fine that day. I went round to do some shopping, get some food shopping in, and I just felt a bit odd. Couldn't really put my finger on it, but went home anyway. Made dinner, felt really tired, and couldn't really sleep. So I was listening to music and I'm thinking, you know what, I'm on a course tomorrow morning. I need to get some sleep. So very long story cut short, that night at 1:30 in the morning, my then husband ended up having to call an ambulance. I was in excruciating pain. I didn't know what was going on. So an ambulance came. I was taken to the local hospital, and I got there, as I say, it was about 1:30 in the morning. So I got there and had the normal tests and everything else, and they couldn't work out what was going on. Now, at this point, I was only halfway through a classic twin pregnancy. So the one thing that I didn't expect was that I was actually in labour. And I don't think the hospital expected that either, to be honest. So a few short hours later, and I'll spare the gory details for people, but I think it's important that you know the circumstances. So a doctor had come and seen me and said they were just going to go off and do something. I was literally in agony. So I remember saying to my then husband, can you just go and speak to, like, go and get that doctor back or somebody? And in the space of time that he went, it couldn't have been more than 2 minutes. I had this like amazingly, like really strong pain that I couldn't describe for a few seconds, and then nothing. And then I thought, oh, what happened? And as I pulled the sheet back, I'd actually delivered the first twin. I wasn't expecting that. So my poor husband came back, and I was like, okay, go and get the doctors. I was in a ward. I was in a ward in the hospital. It was nighttime, and I remember being in agony and thinking, I can't wake anybody up. I need to be quiet, which is bizarre. So this thing had happened. The doctor came back, the nurse came back, wheeled me over to the maternity unit, where I then delivered the other twin. Now, at 18 weeks, unfortunately, that's too young for a baby to survive. So within that very short space of time, these dreams and aspirations I had, building this business, starting this family, and everything just crashed. And it was like, okay, so what do I do? Do I have to start this process again? What do I have to do? Something in that moment really, I think, significant, but also quite strange happened. I remember speaking to my then husband and saying, you know what? Our lives are never going to be the same again. Everything that we've known or thought is going to be different. But this situation, no matter how bad it seems, no matter how painful it seems, has got to make a difference to like our lives and people's lives. And to this day, I don't know why I said that. I really felt it. And I remember saying that. So there's a horrible grieving process that it's almost like I wouldn't want anybody to ever have to go through, because losing children is hard, losing people is hard, losing babies are hard, but kind of losing that whole prospect of the family that you thought you were going to have is really tough. And what I would say is, and it's interesting because when on the rare occasions that I have shared this story, people have come out of the woodwork just to say thank you. So my intent on this story isn't like to sensationalize anything. It's to really help you see that this became my gift in ugly wrapping. You couldn't even imagine that something so terrible that, like, years later I could look back and say, you know what? It taught me so much about myself. It taught me so much about the human psyche. And it also taught me so much about how strong we can be in the face of adversity. Now, that was my thing for me. However, for somebody else, it could be a redundancy that's breaking their heart. It could be a relationship split. It could be bullying from school. It could be bankruptcy. So the gift in ugly wrapping is the thing that hits us, like it sideswipes us, often from out of nowhere. Sometimes we can see it coming, but we don't imagine the worst. It's the thing that swipes us, but it's like the thing that doesn't kill us, but makes us stronger. And I really believe, like, I know that many people have a gift in ugly wrapping. And I really believe, not necessarily that things happen for a reason, but these things, they they show us stuff about ourselves. They build character of ourselves. They give us a certain tenacity that we didn't enroll for in learning, but we have it. And I'm sure that you get this as well, Michael, as a coach. One of the gifts in Ugly Wrapping, and I actually, on last year, so the 8th of December was the day that the twins, who I affectionately called the Pips as I was pregnant, and I still call them the Pips, it was a bit of a Jenny and the Pips moment, you know, and I still like remember fondly that day, even though it was a day that I couldn't forget. It was like the day that changed the course of my life. It showed me so many things about being fearful. It showed me so many things about having courage. It showed me so many things about the circle of life. It showed me so many things about how we support ourselves and how people support us. And what was interesting was, a few days after I left hospital and went home, like with this kind of still 1 minute shell shocked, did this really happen? Did I just have some weird, bad, sick dream? I remember a friend of mine calling me, and as I answered the phone, I don't even know why I answered the phone, but as I answered the phone, she was in floods of tears. So I kind of braced myself. So I went from feeling a bit sorry for myself to, oh my gosh, my friend's crying, I really need to help her. And she was like, oh, Jenny, it's so awful. And so for the first few seconds, I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to say to her? You know, it's all right and not to worry. She went, that's just the worst thing that could have happened. I've lost my job. I've been made redundant. And I was a bit like, oh. And in that moment, the gift in Ugly Wrapping that started from that point, or I learned from that point, was, do you know what? In life, we internalize events and situations outside of ourselves. We internalize things as being big or small or really, really bad or not so bad, or you can cope with it. But the truth of the matter is, when I heard my friend crying down the phone, I realized that a loss is a loss is a loss. Whether, like, for some person, they might be breaking their heart literally over losing a fingernail. For somebody else, it might be a job, it might be a partner, it might be the status that they once had somewhere, it might be a car, it might be a child. And that's not to negate somebody that's gone through a terrible loss at all. You know, I've been there. But what I saw in that moment was that how we internalize loss is pretty much the same. And the gift in Ugly Wrapping from that point was like that it could be such a great springboard for what we wanted to do in our lives. So that moment of me saying, this is probably the worst thing that could happen, but I want to make this count. I want to make this matter. This needs to be important. I think almost somewhere within me, I started to look for the gifts. What could this show me? What could this teach me? What could this teach other people? And interestingly, I started by saying that, you know, now I coach people in visibility and helping them to stand out. And people think that's all about showing off and rah-rah-rahing and jazz hands and, whoa, look at me, how important I am. But actually, the truth of being visible and actually getting out there, whether it's for a promotion, whether it's in the dating scene, whether it's that you want to do something with your health, whether it's your business, whether it's from a big stage, is that there's some undercurrents of things that often stop us. Wouldn't it be great if we could use our own gifts in Ugly Wrapping to be able to, like, springboard us and show us what we've learned, but also to accelerate us moving forward? Wouldn't it be great that instead of being scared to share our stories, and, you know, this is a pretty personal story, instead of being scared to share it, that we share it in the hope that somebody else gets the gift in Ugly Wrapping too? Wouldn't it be great if we came out and said, you know what, I was bullied as a child, and this is the effect it had on me at that point, but here's what I learned now, and here's how it can help you. And it wasn't until 2013 when a private client of mine that I was working with, like over a 6-month period, one day she phoned me up and she said, I don't know if I can do our call today, something terrible's happened. And she had a personal circumstance. And I said, okay, let's talk about the personal circumstance, because it's going to get in the way of what you're doing. So we discussed it. She was really, like, she wasn't in a great place. I thanked her for speaking to me, because it's hard to speak to anybody when you're down in the valleys. And after we finished working together, she sent me a note and she said, I've worked with so many coaches that will tell you that when you're in this dip, they'll do the fastest thing that they can to pull you out of it. But it doesn't serve you. It like they're pulling you out of it doesn't do anything for you. She said, but with you, and I remember the exact expression she used. She said, it's like you walked with me through the valley of the shadow of death. And honestly, it chokes me now to think that so many people go through that. They don't have coaches, they don't have support, they feel like they've got to go through it alone. And literally, there are many people that are there to support people that are going through something terrible. And it's almost like they say, okay, I'm going to leave you at this side of the river, you cross through that deep water and I'll meet you at the other side. It's like nobody wants to go there. And that's when I realized one of the other gifts in Ugly Rapping about the whole situation with the pips and what they gave me was like, I'm not scared to go through something with somebody. If it's deep, if it's ugly, if it's nasty to them, I'm not going to say, well, that's too much information. I know, let's affirm it away. And trust me, I love affirmations like anybody else does. But it enables them to be able to walk through their own darkness and come out of the other side to do the things that they want to do in life. So it's like this gift really had a ripple effect. And when I shared this last year, I thought twice about whether I should share it or not. But the reason I wanted to share it was because I thought if it's been so helpful to me, maybe there's an insight that it might be helpful to somebody else. And when I shared the post, of all places, modern day sharing, I shared it on my Facebook page and I made it into a public post. And I spoke to my ex and said, look, I'm going to share this. Is it okay? And everything else like that. I picked out, there were so many lessons, but I think I picked out 7 to 9 lessons, like the lessons that I learned. I got so many comments, so many shares. And the thing that really still to this day stunned me, I got messages from people all over the world. A woman who I'd never met before in New Zealand was like, thank you for sharing that story. People were coming to me saying, I realised I'm not the only one. There were women that were telling me about their own miscarriages. And it's almost like it made me realise that, why didn't I share this before? Why didn't I share this sooner? That said, I still waited from December till now to be able to share this story again. And one of the things that, you know, we talked about Tony Robbins earlier, he is really great with mastery. And I'm so grateful to you, Michael, for doing these programs on mastery, because this is stuff that needs to be discussed. It might not be pretty, but it needs to be talked about. There are people out there that have gone through traumas, abuse, all sorts of things. And there's not an outlet for them, not only to share their story, but to share the insights, the mastery that they learn from it. So this is why when you approached me about this, I was like, I need to share this because you are the master of mastery. And I just think that somebody hearing this, I hope will have a resonance somewhere along the line that they can, that they can really understand how it has everything to do with the person they are today, how it's formed their character, how it's made them stronger, how it's taught them things about themselves that they perhaps didn't even know they needed to learn, how it brings it round to full circle of self-mastery, how we move forward, how we master our lives, how we master our internal game, whether professionally or personally. These kinds of things, come in life and they show us things. They show us things.
Yeah, and what I thought was interesting as well, excuse me, was that you said that it's this concept of having the gift in ugly rapping, as you said, and it's interesting because a lot of people they experience this ugly rapping, don't they? They have the trauma or the bad experience, but it's like they never get to the gift. It's like they never get to this point where there is a gift. And I guess it's a case of being in a position where you experience the ugly rapping and then you think, okay, well, how can I actually learn from it to the extent where it becomes a gift? And is there is there any element of positivity that is actually possible? Because sometimes it's not. You know, there are some people that I've worked with that there's almost no positive at all. But you know, just that one small thing, even if it's even if it's this idea that you've made it, you've made it to the other side, you know, that can be enough to just sort of almost pull people back to this you know, normal, as some people call it, you know, because when we're going through this negative wrapping to get to the gift, it can be quite painful, can be quite negative. And when you're there, when you're in the moment, as you said, it can be hard to see the gift. So the next question that I want to sort of reiterate for yourself, Jenny, is what would be your top 3 or top 5 gifts in ugly wrapping? So if we were to generalize a little bit from everything that you've experienced and all the things that you've learned, what would be your top gifts in ugly wrapping that you'd like to share?
Okay, there are so many, you know, we haven't rehearsed this, so I'm just going to pick what came up. So the first thing to say is that in order to see the gifts, it's like, don't look for the gifts. I don't know if that makes any sense. Be comfortable with where you are in your scenario, in your moment right now. You know, we are of positive mindsets and everything else like that, but something happens normally to people that are interested in personal development, where they see a situation as quote unquote bad and they think that they have to make it good. So they'll look at what they can do to drag themselves out of it. So the first thing is allow yourself to feel whatever it is you're feeling, because in that kind of bad feeling, that ugliness, it gives you insights. You know, if you're the person that's sat in on a Saturday night and you're looking for love and you are like, I'm so lonely, I hate this, don't automatically go out and have a drink of beer. Don't automatically go out and say, oh, well, I'm going to spend time with my friends. Allow yourself at least one opportunity to sit in the moment and say, like, what is this showing me? It might be showing you a certain feeling. It's normally a very strong emotion that you're feeling about that current situation. That means that it's something that you need to see that can then move you forward. So that's the first thing. Really sit with the emotion. Don't try and get rid of it. The second thing that I would share is bizarrely, and I think this speaks to the bigger subject of mental health, and there's been a great big kind of campaign about, especially about men's mental health, but I think for anyone in general, is there is this whole kind of habit that we've got of, we feel really bad, so we need to keep it to ourselves. And one of the worst things you can do. And even though it seems like sometimes almost unnatural and hard to do, have somebody that you can speak to about it. Now, this is what's bizarre about the story. So obviously I had the woman that phoned like 4 days after I came out of hospital with the redundancy. That was an outlet actually where I was able to speak. Then very bizarrely, into my inbox, for some unknown reason, was actually a video clip of Tony Robbins doing an intervention in a conference in America. And honestly, you can't make this stuff up. Doing a conference in America with a woman who had just lost her 16-year-old daughter. And the clip was showing them all like pumping and jumping and everything else. And he asks the audience a question, and this woman literally goes from yay to oh. And he went through an intervention with her, like I think it was 20 minutes or something. Like, how do you make yourself happy 1 minute and then make yourself sad the next minute? There was something about watching that. It's almost like observing that happening, that I realized, although her situation was different, it was kind of the same. Now, this is the bit that it just really moved me. And I remember tweeting Tony Robbins and saying, just watch the video with the woman. It was amazing. And guess what? Tony Robbins tweeted me back. And I was like, whoa, what was that? he was like, were you there? And I said, well, no, actually, I wasn't there. I've just watched the recording of it, but it is really life-changing, so thank you. So that was a really bizarre piece. And that came from me, I mean, being open to speaking it out in some way, shape or form. So be open to sharing that is the second thing I would say. Another thing, and another person who I admire their work greatly, and at this point in time had only worked at from a distance, is Jamie Smart. So Jamie Smart, again on Twitter, I felt like I had nothing better to do with my time than mope, cry, watch TV and just be on Twitter at the time. He shared his happiness cards that he used to do. So third thing is, like, even if you're not feeling happy and don't think you can get there, ask yourself an honest question about, you know, this is how rubbish I feel right now. Where would I like to get to eventually? Don't say I have to get like that by the end of the day or the week, but where would I like to get to? So as his happiness cards pop up, I remember buying a pack, and my only job every day was just to have a look at one happiness card and take it on board. So after about 3 days, I was like, this is great. You know, this is lifting me out of something. So I sent him a tweet. And this is the amount of respect I still have to this day for Jamie Smart, who I've now met in the flesh a few times. He sent me a private message because I said, look, I've just gone through this miscarriage and, you know, lots of these twins or whatever. He sent me a story of an article of somebody in Canada who had gone through something similar. He didn't know me from Adam. He sent me a private message, knew that it was something that I could probably use, asked my email address, didn't add me to email lists or anything else like that, just sent me this piece of information. So the third nugget on that is to really look at like where you could go to, even if you don't believe you can get there, even if it feels soul destroying, life crushing. Look for where you could get to someday. Don't make it, I have to be there tonight, I have to affirm it away, or by next week I have to feel better. Or the worst one that I hear the most in bereavement is, give it a year, you'll be okay. And then after a year, it's like, oh, you're still moping about that? Come on, chin chin. You know, there's no authority on the amount of time it will take somebody to move through. I don't like the term get over, because I don't think you do. I think you learn to live through or with something. So that's the other thing that I would say. Don't try and put a time limit on the thing. So if you've been made redundant, don't say this time next week I hope to feel good, or this time next month I'm going to feel better, I'm going to have a new job. You know, take some of those principles, allow you to feel how you feel and move on. And I'm probably not even sharing the gifts that I shared in the original piece. So other gifts that I would say is there were this is a weird one because it logically doesn't make any sense, but I heard very shortly afterwards of a lady that I'd worked with some years before that had gone through something similar, but in my experience I thought was worse. She'd gone through a stillbirth a week before her baby was due, and then there was no heartbeat. And I remember thinking, that's got to be worse. That has got to be worse. Now, I didn't use that to compare my loss or my grief with hers. It gave me a form of perspective, and we got into contact and were able to speak, which was great because I wasn't afraid to ask her questions. I wasn't afraid to say, like, how are you feeling really? So if you're going through this, whether, you know, whatever it is, whether it's grief, whether it's loneliness, whether it's like mental illness or health, you know, whether it's a redundancy, whether it's, you know, bankruptcy, find somebody that you know that you can speak to who will simply listen and allow you to, you know, to say. They won't go, come on, chin up, you know. You need somebody that you can express and speak to this to. And then another gift that I would really strongly like advocate was the gift in what these circumstances show you, what it shows you about yourself. It shows you a lot about yourself and some really positive things, maybe how strong you actually are. There's an expression, isn't there, of saying that sometimes you don't know how strong you are until being strong is the only choice you've got, or something there or thereabouts. And that strength should definitely be pulled from you and not given to you by someone else. So friends, you know, well-meaning friends and relatives often don't know what to say when you're going through a downtime, especially if you're a chirpy person. So they'll often offer you things. And I would invite you to not necessarily take on board somebody else's stuff from the outside inwards, but like look deep within yourself about what, you know, what your gifts are, what you're noticing about yourself that you didn't actually notice before, these strengths that you have. You could find that even in the face of adversity, you're a really great communicator. You know, even in the face of adversity, you have an ability to pick yourself up. I could be really kind of down and moping, but all it would take is a phone call or someone to say, how are you doing? And all of a sudden this kind of, yeah, I'm fine, thank you, would pop up. And then it's almost like, okay, now you're gone. Okay, as you were. Okay, I'll be sad again. Do you know what I mean? So it's this whole thing about like knowing yourself. You get to know yourself. Now, the other kind of like gift I think in ugly wrapping is, whether it's about grief or redundancy or, you know, anything else like that, it's like you don't actually ever know what life is going to deal you. You don't know what's going to happen within the next minutes, next hours, next year. So what if we allowed ourselves to live with purpose in the way that we want to live right now, even if it doesn't make any sense to anybody else? So allow yourself to live in a way that if today was your last day, you could go, do you know what? I have done the best with my life with what I've got. And people often fall into the trap of thinking you need wealth to do that. Sometimes you do, but there are other times, like if you want to be known as the person who's friendly, known as the person who's supportive, just go out and start being friendly and supportive at work, in your life, at the bus stop, on the tube, you know, in the petrol station, in the supermarket. Go out and start doing it now. Far, far more fulfilling, you know, to be able to be the person that you're supposed to be. And I would also say, don't wait for your gift in ugly wrapping to happen to get into action. It's like so many of us get this slap around the face because we've kind of been a bit stagnant in our lives. And the gift in ugly wrapping here is it shows you where you've been stagnant. It shows you like where you've just like taken the rough with the smooth and been a little bit static. And when you think about it as an emotion, guilt, you know, guilt is quite a good one. Let's use guilt. If you feel guilty about something, it's a really static emotion. It kind of renders you immobile. Whereas if you're frustrated, if you're angry, there's emotion behind it. Don't be afraid of utilizing that energy to then transform it into something that's more useful for you. I'm not saying go and rage and smash windows or anything, but use the difference between, you know, having that energy and having that, you know, emotion that moves to go and drive you for the thing that you want to do. I remember on the morning of the 8th of December 2010, you know, I remember my ex saying to me, I feel so guilty. And I remember just going, whatever you do, feel anything you want, but don't feel guilt. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of your emotions. Don't even go there, you know? Again, not quite sure where that came from, but it was this recognition that this static emotion doesn't serve anyone, doesn't serve you, doesn't serve the people around you, doesn't serve anyone. And the weird thing is that in terms of helping people to stand out and raise their profile and to be more visible, I can really draw not only on that story, on many of my own life stories, and help people to draw on their own life stories to move them forward, help them to draw on their own fears and to see where they're making it up, and help them to be more, you know, tenacious in and courageous in what they do around this whole putting themselves out there. So I hope they were useful or beneficial in some way.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot there. I was gonna add questions and try and pick your brain on them, but you managed to answer all those all by yourself.
Thank you.
So I think we've definitely came to a close there. You've definitely ended on a very high note. So if anybody watching this or anybody seeing this wants to get to know you a little bit or wants to find out more about you, where can they go?
Okay, so I'm going to do something that people don't normally do. It's like the world and their wives on Facebook. So if you want to just kind of like say, okay, is this a bit too good to be true? Is she always like this? Go into Facebook. I've got a public page there called The Queen of Being Seen. It's all around visibility and helping people to stand out. So it's facebook.com/visibility vibe. I'll send you the link so you can put it on the video or whatever. If you are more around the kind of the coaching, the personal effectiveness stuff, I actually do have another page, and every morning at 7 a.m. on a Monday, I do a little Monday motivation just to help you kickstart your day and your week. And that's facebook.com/Jenny Make It Happen. If, however, you're watching this and thinking, I've got a busy life and I've got a business or aspiring business and I want to really get out there in the world and make a difference and be able to use my stories to propel me, but also to inspire and motivate others, I do have a Facebook group as well. But I also appreciate that before you come into a community of really like happy-go-lucky, I call them the vibers, before you go into that kind of community, you might just want to check me out. So by all means do that. And a worst case scenario, just Google my name, Jenny Kovacs, and you'll see that all my sort of stuff that comes up, whether you're a LinkedIn person or something else. My request is if you find me somewhere else, just send me a little message to say why you want to connect with me, because I do get lots of requests from people and I'm just like, who are they? I don't know who they are and how, you know, why would I connect? So just say that you've seen me on Michael's show and that you'd like to connect that way. And I am more than happy to connect. But yeah, tell me your stories and definitely share them with Michael as well, because I know that he's a bit of a mindset mastery man himself.
Yeah, pretty much. All right, so I will put the links in the description of this video. Make sure that if you want to see more of these, so you want to see more stories, more people sharing their lessons learned from their experience, make sure that you subscribe to the channel as well. Just so you keep up to date so you don't miss one. And Jen, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.